Challenge runs in video games have been something I've been fond of for quite a while. On top of adoring that type of video on YouTube, I tend to love doing them myself. Though I've only created one video on this platform that goes through a challenge run, I've been doing these for a long time. My first ever challenge run was a ladies only run in Sacred Stones. Why? Because they tend to get shafted in the series with limited classes and playable characters, and it was pretty fun. So eventually my mind wandered to other games I could do a similar challenge for, and it led me to Xenoblade Chronicles. I've wanted to do a run like this for a while, and I figured it couldn't be that bad. It was very much that bad. But we'll get into that later. I was optimistic at the start, so I'll pretend to be optimistic right now. So anyways, we need ourselves some rules. What does it mean when I say ladies only? That means that so long as I can play as a girl, I can only use them for anything. Battles? Obviously that's a no-go. Gem crafting? Nope. Skills? Well, sort of. You don't really use the characters to get skills on their skill trees. So long as it isn't a skill that gives everyone a buff no matter what, I'll allow them to get it and create a skill link with. But that's the only thing they're allowed to do. I will also be playing with a level cap for the current mandatory fight, so no overleveling for me. And also, if you want me to do super bosses or future connected, maybe at some point, but not today. Without further ado, let's get into the story of how I lost my mind. We start off on the sword of a great titan, locked in a battle between Homs and Mekon. We get introduced to our heroes, get into a fight, and damn it, they're all men. Well, we know the rules, so we just have to go through these series of fights before we can get to the real meat and bones. Eventually, we flash forward a year and meet Shulk and Rhine, two more disgusting males. Ugh. Okay, so since these two are permanent party members, I just decided to make them as ugly as possible. And so we continue on through the story a bit more, where we have only the one mandatory fight at the beginning, before our attention is put onto this girl, Fiora. Now we can finally begin this challenge properly. Now, what can Fiora do? Well, in a vacuum, Fiora is pretty fine. She has fast attacks, a hard-hitting talent art, and a nice support spread of arts. I go around and do some quests, buy some nice equipment, and get in some battles with some of these bugs. That's when I realized something odd. I'm taking a lot of damage against these low-level monsters. A lot more than I'm comfortable with. And this is when it dawns on me. When I was thinking about this challenge, I was anticipating it to really start when I got Sharla, but my mind had completely glossed over the early game where I had to be stuck with Fiora, and she's actually really, really frail. Like, frailer than Shulk, who's supposed to be a glass cannon. Fiora can at least do a decent amount of damage, but she's going to suffer when surviving fights. It'll be fine though, right? Either way, I decided to continue the main story a little bit, just so that I can get started on getting Fiora up in numbers. Now this did add Shulk and Rhine in the party, but I have a way to mitigate their usefulness in two ways. For one, I can lower their level using challenge mode, so at this point, Shulk and Rhine won't ever be more than level 1, when we have a girl in the party at least. Secondly, you can actually use tactics in battle to make it so that they don't attack. If you do this though, they will still encourage you if you get low enough on tension, so I made another rule here. At the beginning of battles, if there's a man in the current party, I have to kill them off immediately. Or if I don't, they cannot encourage me once. Burst Affinity is on the table because that activates whether or not they're alive. It's also here that I try my first unique monster, and realize something else. Yes, the bad news just keeps coming. Fiora's arts are also really damn bad this early on. For where the level cap is, she gets 4 arts. Power Smash, which does extra damage from the back, when the enemy will always be facing us anyways. Oh, but we can break and daze enemies! But since we don't have a way to topple enemies, those two skills don't do anything. Lastly, we have Lacerate, which is normally pretty nice for applying bleed damage, which damages the enemy over time, making it so that Fiora doesn't draw as much aggro. But since it doesn't do much more damage than just her auto attacks, or maybe it does even less, I don't know, it just isn't worth using. And going out of our way to use arts isn't the best move anyways, because we want to fill our talent gauge up by using auto attacks. because then we get to use Butterfly Step, which does incredible damage. Getting off a few of these in a battle means certain victory for us. But the only problem is just getting there. Either way, I decided to send Fiora on the daring path, mainly to just get her some more strength, as I'm sure none of these skills will matter for the moment. I decided to skip the unique monster for now and focus on going through the cave and dealing with a few enemies needed for quests. Have a much too close fight with the damn Brog, and finally we get to the next mandatory fight, which I don't want to do yet. I want my revenge on these unique monsters, so I start grinding on specific enemies to get Fiora her best weapons for this part of the game. Then I try the Bunya unique monster again before I get rocked, and just decided to continue the game. Now, the first thing I realized when fighting these two normal-sized enemies is that, wow, I'm taking a lot of damage against these guys, and I didn't even get one of them halfway down. That's when the true horrors of this run showed its ugly head. Fiora was fine against lower level enemies, she can just outdamage them, but bosses? By herself? She had less than a 0% chance to win. So what could I even do at this point? I already hit the max level, and after getting some better gear I did a little better, but still nowhere near enough. I had to start thinking of other strats. I realized that I may have to do quite a lot of grinding for SP to get Fiora some more skills, which I was thankfully allowed to do since Expert Mode let you change your EXP. First, I went for Zeal to try to get some ether defense up. The enemy boss had this really nasty ether move that hit for quite a bit, so getting that could certainly help. I also made sure to make most of my gems defense, like with agility gems, hoping that would be enough. During one of my tries in between grinding I got a bit further in, I realized something else about the boss. If one of them went below half HP, both would enter into an aura. One would gain better offense and worse defense, and the other the opposite. This made me even more worried, as I was hoping that defeating one would make the fight significantly easier if I could just burst it down fast enough. But the one that gets the defense buff is the one that enters half HP. Slowly, my spirits were getting crushed that this was even possible. In another try, I switched targets and saved Butterfly Step for the lower defense one after getting the other one down to half. And while it does an impressive amount of damage, it's still nowhere near enough. This is also where I would like to say how much I absolutely despise the fact that auto attacks can be cancelled sometimes if you block or dodge an enemy attack. Seeing as how auto attacks were my best way of doing damage, this was obviously a massive disadvantage and a major annoyance due to the devs not thinking through the implications. However, there were a few other rays of hope. I could actually get a meaty power smash off while the enemy is activating their aura, as they stand completely still while doing it. That gives me just a slight bit more damage output than before, so I didn't know how helpful it would be in the long run. But at this point, I was looking for anything to make this fight easier. Noticing that getting the ether defense skill would take far too long and that I would rather keep my strength buff, I swapped over to Zeal after getting the haste buff at the beginning of battles. Getting this was actually a lifesaver since it significantly increased my damage at the start. However, during one of my attempts with this knowledge, I noticed a few things. For one thing, I did better, but I was still getting clapped. But I also noticed that my positioning matters a whole lot. See, these enemies do their auto attacks at close range. Sometimes they cheat if you've been too far for too long, but that's usually what they do. I realized that if I can get the enemy stuck, say on the other one, that drastically lowers the amount of damage I take when there's two of them. Of course, I still have to worry about their ether attacks, and sometimes they just decide to attack me anyways, but it still was a massive help. This gave me a bunch of hope actually. I figured that if I can get super lucky with burst affinity, dodges, and the enemy not attacking as much, I could get through this hellish fight and onto bigger and better things. I was finally seeing some success as well, as one of the attempts I fully took down one of the enemies. Sadly, when I got to that point I had way too little HP to finish them, but this was a massive step. I took a break to try out the unique monsters again. I had my eyes set on 3 specifically. The giant caterpillar, giant rabbit, and giant fish. I tried giant rabbit first, and didn't go well. But then I remembered that the giant caterpillar had a blue background because of the level difference, meaning that I would get an agility buff against it. This was my chance, and lo and behold, I was able to topple the beast. Just barely. Like, double-digit HP barely. But still, this was a huge achievement. The front armor it dropped gave me better defenses as well, so I figured this may be the chance I've been waiting for. It was still just a bit too rough, but I got the defensive one down pretty damn low, which was great. I just needed a little extra push. I decided to try the rabbit and won on my first try, getting these boots, which were worse than what I had since it didn't have an agility gem already in the gem slot, but this was another achievement for me. Now, taking down unique monsters is really nice for getting some additional skills on your characters. However, that feature isn't available yet, so this was mainly just for the loot and self-satisfaction. I need to feel some sort of satisfaction throughout this slog. I then tried the fish and failed. But taking out the fish near him to make the fight easier got me the second skill of Daring, which gave her more damage on the first strike. Perfect for my talent art at the beginning. I hoped this would be enough to save me from taking too much damage at the beginning, and the added strength from having the skill on the tree would help too. I thought this was it. I took down one of them and still had 240 HP. I got Burst Affinity, which brought my tension to its max, and got off a talent art. And this right here shattered every last hope I had. This art that no one ever playing casually even noticed it exists was soon to be the bane of my existence. What does Final Defense mode do? Oh, nothing really. It just gives the enemy both buffs to its defense and strength, as well as a haste buff, which, by the way, is a really devastating buff when the enemy auto attacks now hit for almost 200 damage on my squishy 700 HP roguelike character. This devastated me in turn. I was at a low point here. I thought this challenge was going to be impossible to do at this point. However, when we get knocked down over and over, do we just quit and give up? No. We get back up, faster, stronger, and with a new determination to not give up. It was going to be long and hard, but getting this close meant that it was absolutely possible. All I had to do was grind, get one more skill in my skill tree, another buff to my strength, and be able to take them down once and for all. And thus I started my killing spree of the Flammies and the Skeeters, all in the hopes of getting enough SP to get my next skill. Eventually, that grinding got me a skill that gave me movement speed. Worthless, but the strength could be enough. I failed again, and again, and again, and went back to the grind. After 7 whole hours in the beginning area, I got the 4th skill in her tree that reduces physical attacks by 10%, and giving her a passive 70 extra strength. This was it. This time I hyper-focused on the defensive one, taking it out as fast as I could. I saved up my butterfly step for the second, unleashed it for a massive amount of damage, and then focused on just my auto attacks. They did a lot since his defenses were lowered. He even used an ether laser which stunned him for long enough for me to finally take him down before he even used his final defense mode. It was almost enough to make me cry. After so long, I had finally taken down the bane of my existence. I could finally continue the story. I rewarded myself by picking up all the treasure chests I never opened up during my grind. Went to Colony 9, which was now being invaded and... oh no. The necessary Mechon fight. But I can't do damage against Mechon if they aren't toppled. Fiora doesn't have topple art. Why, after all the shit I had to go through, I get walled by an enemy that will only take 1 damage per each attack. Alright. Fiora doesn't fight this battle specifically since she's looking for a Dunban. And she comes right back after this fight, like she wasn't gone at all. I can just use Shulk and Rhyne for this fight. Wow. I, really dodged a bullet this time. And just to check, I used Lacerate on one of the enemy Mechon in the colony, and sure enough, it took 0 damage from bleeding. I straight up don't think I could continue if Fiora was part of this fight, so... cheers! Continuing on, Shulk heads to the lab to get the Monado, the sword that for sure will be used during this playthrough. But the way is closed off. With quick thinking, he tries to get the materials to blast open the rubble, before sending Fiora by herself to get what we need. This leaves Shulk and Rhyne to fend for themselves so I can play the game normally now. After this fight, we get Dunban who carries hard before we get to the fight with this giant Mechon. After a little bit, Fiora uses the mobile artillery to fight back against the giant enemy Mechon. In a tragic sacrifice, she is killed by the enraged Mechon. Let's go! I'm so glad she died. I no longer have to use her fragile self in any fights in the future. You could not believe the wide smile I had when this fictional character was slaughtered right in front of me. Am I crazy? Mayhaps. Either way, at this point, we are free from the opening area, with no Fiora in the party. We are able to continue the game normally. At this point, we are able to craft gems, but as per the rules, I have to just go through the game as fast as I can to get the next girl party member. So, not normally. I'm very intelligent. Oh yeah, and now Shulk and Ryan are rocking level 23 because of how much I grinded for SP. This made this section of the game pathetically easy, and we eventually make our way to the Bionis Lake, where we meet up with Charla. Her child is about to die or some shit, I don't really care. What I do care about is having another party member in our group. Now, Charla here, in contrast to Fiora, is all about sustainability. She's all about healing and keeping the party healthy, and in turn, she only really has one offensive art that's worth a damn. However, despite her being a healer, she can also be pretty tanky, so it won't be too much of an issue keeping her alive. The problem with this will come into play later, so just for now I decided to customize her appearance. Charla's outfits are almost always ugly, so this was the best I could throw together. I put her on Perseverance to boost her physical defense as well as I could, and now that it's open, I could inherit skills from Shulk and Ryan to her. Don't get too excited, the only skill I can get from Shulk that's worth a damn is the ability to reduce weight, which is great, but I can't get it because his Burst Affinity skill is before it, and I can't get that until he is out of the party. And the only one that's worth it with Ryan is an increase in AP, which is nice, but it doesn't help out much in battle. Oh well, no use crying over it. I decided to fight some unique monsters for one thing, just to test her capabilities, and yeah, she can keep herself alive for a long time. Tranquilizer specifically is really damn nice. It's not something I use at all in playthroughs, but when I'm the only one attacking, it's great to stall out for heals. Overall, I feel really positive about Charla. After that practice run, I decided to continue the story to see how well I can do to bosses. This is the Mechon M71, and he's nasty on a casual playthrough. His tentacle adds can do a lot to your party, and burning is an annoying debuff that deals damage over time. However, as just Charla, she can keep her distance and attack with her Thunderbolt. This makes the enemy barely attack you at all. I whittled down the tentacles, and then there's almost no issues to speak of. The amount of times the big Mechon can attack me is so infrequent that I can out-heal it easily. After about half of its HP is down, it starts its second phase, where you have to chase it and fight it on top of this mountain. And second verse, same as the first. He does more damage and it gets a little scary at times, but it's still pretty manageable to heal and deal damage. After that, we take it down and get our asses kicked by this giant guy. We can then continue the story after a 50-minute long fight? Okay, yeah, this is the other issue. Charla is a healer first and foremost. She does almost no damage at all. While these fights are relatively safe, they also take forever. It makes grinding an issue as well, since those fights will take forever whenever I need more SP. Charla seems like a blessing, but in some cases, she's definitely more of a curse. Oh yeah, I should also mention that even though I've gotten multiple affinity levels with Shulk and Ryan, I'm still only allowed to use the first skill slot when inheriting skills. Otherwise, I could have rocked some really nice skills at this point, but that's just part of the parameters. With that said, knowing what the next level cap is, I decided to do quite a lot of quests to build myself up. With the new level cap, I can blow through some of the previous unique monsters pretty effortlessly. And we also get this new art called Heat Bullet, which adds tension to whenever we use it, which is pretty nice to have for the moment. I also started to get some pretty nice equipment for Charla, which would sure to help me out immensely for the battles to come. Figuring that I should be pretty fine, I decided to continue on with the story without doing too much more in the way of side quests. I mean, the previous boss already showed that fights were more than possible with Charla. It just will take long. Now we needed to get into the Ether Mines to save the most hated character in the series. Through exploring, we unlock Charla's second skill in Devotion, which is useless at this moment, and meet Othara. I love Atharum, but we can't pay him any mind, we got another battle on our hands. It's just a bunch of weak mechons, so this fight shouldn't be hard at all. However, while fighting these low-level enemies, I noticed something odd. Charla was taking quite a bit of damage. Now, thankfully, with Charla having 3 different healing moves, a shield, and the ability to make one enemy completely useless for half of the battle, I was still able to defeat an enemy to make my chances of survival a lot easier. Something to note about Charla is her talent, which is infamously terrible and only serves to hinder her. But in this context, it was actually pretty nice for a minor amount of healing every time I popped it. And since I really can't do damage unless I use Thunderbolt, which has a bit of a recharge to it, I can put this in the rotation without it interrupting my flow at all. Now, while the fight wasn't that bad after this, it still made me worry a bit for what's to come. But it's fine, I'm certain there'll be no more mob fights in the near future. Going further into the mines, I try my hand on this lizard unique monster, which fails, so I just continue onwards. Now, as a dungeon, the ether mines are pretty linear and easy to avoid fights in. There are only a handful of forced fights in this place, and they're all at the tail end of the place. So here we find a Mechon M84. He is close to my level, but he is also a normal enemy. And there should be no problems here, right? Well, you would be wrong because this guy actually hits pretty damn hard. Not to mention he has some nasty moves up his sleeves. High damaging ether art, fast auto attacks, and a topple art just to rub salt in the wound. On occasion, I will get a vision for them. But just in case I don't, I have to make certain that I'm topped up at all times. Otherwise, I could get destroyed by being toppled for far too long. Now, despite this guy being particularly vicious, we managed to get through to him despite how close we were to dying on occasion. It's a good thing there's only one of these guys and not 2. Why does this game hate me? Okay, yeah, so right after that close fight, we have to deal with 2 of them. I also forgot to mention that Tranquilizer doesn't always work on these guys, so it's not easy to make this a 1v1. I get shredded within a minute because 2 of these guys are way too much for one semi-frail healer. So this was yet another wall that wasn't even a boss, that was just 2 minor enemies. So I decided to play around a little bit before committing to the grind. Last time I was able to take down my enemies thanks to my positioning, so maybe I can try moving around a bit more. Sure enough, I don't take the full front of the damage like before if I move around the field. As I can't attack without using Thunderbolt anyways, this is a perfectly fine strategy to employ. It's still a risky battle though, because anytime I stop moving to heal myself or to attack, I'm liable to get hit by an enemy quite a bit. Either way, to make things more consistent, I need to work on building Charla up more. Not level-wise, mind you, just in terms of better equipment. Specifically, I hunted Dark Marakmore for a bit to get the Pride Sniper, which gives Charla some nice defensive stats as well as 2 gem slots for me to do anything with. Well, not anything with, because I still can't craft gems yet. This time I didn't bother with either defense, and just went with physical defenses and HP. They only have 1 ether attack, and while it's dangerous, I feel a lot better just racing my defenses for 99% of their attacks, rather than just 1 rare one. Somewhere in my grinding, I actually get an amazing fight against these guys, where I was but a few inches away from defeating one of them and being home free. However, they just completely disengaged? Are you freaking kidding me? Why did they do that? Were they just getting tired of my constant looping? What's wrong with the enemies in this game? After that frustrating moment, I go back to grinding Charla's Perseverance skill tree for a better physical defense stat. After getting it to the 3rd stage, I gave it one more shot, and I was so damn happy to finally get through this part. It took every tiny bit of optimization I had, but I somehow managed to get through it in the end. I was finally free. I feel so invincible. At this point, it would have to take 4 enemies to take me down. Why do I open my big mouth? I was dreading this fight so much. I knew from the beginning that this fight gives people some trouble on their first playthroughs, and going through enemies that spawn so often was not an enjoyable idea for me. After everything, was this truly what kills the run? Nope. The thought of fighting so many enemies at once is daunting, especially with a big boss dude in there as well, but honestly, the little guys don't even do that much damage to me because they're so low level. And because I knew that Zord would just go to a cutscene after a certain amount of damage, I just decided to focus on him. I did get close to dying, and Zord's attacks were kinda scary, but after enough focus fire, I just won. Easy as that. Even though I was pretty happy about that, we still had to have one more proper fight with him after his armor dissolved in the Ether River. Does this mean that my rifle can finally hurt him without needing to use Thunderbolt? Nope. No infinite stall for me. Or at least not with moving around. See, Zord in this second fight is still a bit scary. He can topple you for one thing. And around half health, he will give himself a haste buff. It's intimidating for sure, but it isn't all that scary so long as I utilize the ability to just walk around and wait for my healing arts to come back. Why is it that the bosses aren't giving me trouble but the mobs are? I don't get it. Either way, it only takes about 20 minutes before Zord dies. But that doesn't stop us from having another fight to do here. And it's a mob fight. Okay, it's actually not too bad, other than me dying the first time. Why? Because the next boss is level 28, so I can use my stored up experience for one thing. And also, since we have Dunban, we can go and utilize his skills now. Well, not yet, since he only has one. And honestly, the skills you can get from him are kind of crummy. Two of them are for a naked Dunban build, which doesn't work as well with Sharla. Another is a skill that reduces spike damage, and then a skill that gives you healing whenever you land a crit, when Charlotte's crit rate isn't that stellar. The aggro increase for damage could be nice for a little bit, but overall he's pretty disappointing for Sharla. Either way, after increasing my level, the fight is a hell of a lot easier since the level gap really helps with lowering the amount of hits I take. At this point, the scariest stuff is behind us. This time for sure. Satoral Marsh is a pleasant ride as there aren't many forced battles in this area. In fact, I just make a direct path to the end and fight the boss, especially since I know what happens afterwards. The Satoral Guardian was no problem for me at all. He's a boss that isn't immune to sleep, so I just play the patient game and hold off on my attacks when I use Tranquilizer to make sure I'm nice and topped off. It's not even that scary when he uses his aura since Tranquilizer goes through for the most part, and that just eats up a lot of time. Satoral Marsh is a minor pit stop before we get to Machna Woods, where going in a little bit we meet up with this unconscious girl. After a minor quest and meeting some white-haired hot guy that surely has no plot relevance, we heal up this girl's ether deficiency or something and she introduces herself as Melia. Then she joins our party. Before I even go into what she can do, I am so happy we finally have more than one party member that we can use! For one thing, fights will go by a lot quicker, especially since she's a damage dealer. I can also get a lot more skills on both her and Sharla since I'm perfectly allowed to get their affinity up and take from each other's skill trees. Next, we can finally craft gems. No more limitations on gems that you get from quests. We can make our very own and build our characters exactly how we want to. And lastly, we can also do chain attacks. We have to make sure that the third party member is dead to do them, but just the fact that we can use the party gauge for chain attacks and reviving, that's also nice, is so damn good. As for Melia herself, she's really damn good to have. She provides buffs to the party with her elements, and then can discharge them for major burst damage. Managing her aggro is difficult, but just having a damage dealer in the first place is going to make things so much easier. The only thing is that since we're doing challenge mode, Melia doesn't start with any experience saved up, so she starts at level 23. So for now, I'm just going to go around and do some side quests. After an extensive bit of side questing, I got Melia up to level 34. She also has white affinity with Sharla, which means a few more skills to connect. I gave Melia Sharla's Ether Explosion from our Ether, and the one that gives her an Ether boost at the beginning of battles. She also got the skill to give HP to encouraged allies from Shulk for just a little bit more survivability. Sharla got the skill from Melia to give her a boost to her healing, Ether, and... oh right, Riggy joined. He gives us better cooldowns at daytime, and that's it. His tree is actually abhorrent for this run because he gets a shit ton of party-wide buffs. Thankfully, there is a tree he can go down that doesn't give him anything, so we don't have to worry about the run being null and void. Now we head to the next boss, the Leone Telethia. And honestly, now that we have 2 party members, this wasn't that difficult at all. Like seriously, Charla at this point is so efficient at healing the party, it's incredible. I do have a scare in the second phase when the Telethia uses Super Aura, which makes physical hits harder to land and gives them a massive regen. Usually you have Shulk in the party to use Monado Purge to get rid of the aura, but Charla and Melia have difficulties dealing with this. The only way to get rid of it is via Mind Blast, which you need to have a full talent gauge for, and if it's not set up beforehand, it's hard to build it up properly because you need to constantly disperse elements. So the Telethia essentially gets a full heal, which isn't all that bad because we can just keep on bursting it down like we did before. The Telethia gives us a minor stump, but nothing more. I was feeling good, riding a high from finally having another party member. But if you're aware of this game and what comes next, you know that I was going to reach the worst possible roadblock imaginable. I know it, you know it, we all know it. That's right, we had to fight the defensive Chromars. What? Wasn't what you were expecting? Well, that's too bad because this is the worst fight in the entire run. And no, I'm not even joking. First things first, when we get to Alchemoth right before we fight these guys, we lose Melia temporarily. And so for this fight we don't have Melia. But that's fine, right? We've survived so many fights beforehand without her. They do an insane amount of damage between the 4 of them for one thing. Coupled with their high strength and fast attacking speed, these guys will rack up damage so damn quickly. Not only that, but they also have really damn annoying debuffs. They can bind you, which makes moving around to avoid attacks not worthwhile. They can block off your arts, which is a damn death sentence since I kinda need to use arts to heal, and worst of all, daze. Have you ever played through the game casually and went with a team involving Ryan and Dunban, and boosted your topple time and topple arts to indefinitely topple the enemy in a loop? That's exactly what the Chromars are doing in this battle. If they hit you with a daze, they'll likely hit you with 3 more, and by the time you get close to the end of one string, they could just decide to use it again. You could stay motionless until they eventually end you. It's ridiculous. So what's the solution here? Well, first of all, I went back to a save before I lose Melia so that she doesn't get left behind with my preps. I did a lot of exploration I didn't do before for a good amount of skill experience. I did as many side quests as I could, at least recent ones for the best equipment I could afford. I mainly wanted to stack up as much physical defense as I possibly could. I had her on Perseverance so that she would just get a little bit more physical defense for that. She was at her 4th skill in that branch, so I assumed it would be enough after all of this. Now their normal attacks were doing single-digit numbers! Yes, this was perfect! I thought to myself before giving it a try and realizing the game hated my guts. See, even with the enemies doing so little with their auto attacks, their 1 ether skill still did a few hundred against me. Couple that with a lot of stun and, well, it was still very easy for me to lose. Even with the 1 or 2 defeated, at any point they could just say screw it and make sure I never get to do anything until I die. I'm not spending as much time on this since it's a lot of stuff you've heard before, but this was legitimately the worst fight in the entire run. But after a few tries with this new equipment, I eventually got through and breathed a sigh of relief. Next up was the high-end Tia assassins, and they barely did any damage to me. Even less than the Chromars, so they were easily defeated. Next up was the high-end Tia Tomb. Melia's part was easy as this part is designed around her being alone. As for Charla, she had to deal with this Orluga Rufus, who was actually kind of annoying. I realized it was yet another enemy with a skill to block off my arts and got frustrated. But soon enough found out that you can actually dodge these attacks if you just run back a lot. That made this fight super easy. I also made sure to take out this unique monster, which was also annoying, with my tension being super low throughout most of the fight. I had to rely on getting my HP low to break visions to get some damn tension to hit my shots. But after that, it wasn't so bad, and I get an awesome pair of glasses for Melia. And now it was the fight I was dreading the most. The Telethia and Tyrea fight. Yeah, these guys were cake. No, really. Tanky Charla is surprisingly viable mid to late game, and so with her getting most of the aggro and healing herself up constantly, I could out-heal almost everything they did. And it was a relatively quick fight as well because we had Melia to support and do tons of damage. Especially with her newly acquired level 10 Summon Bolt. Yeah, this fight was supposed to be the big annoying one, but it turns out it was just Easy. Next fight was with the Sky Ray, and he was also incredibly easy. Charlotte was still taking about no damage from enemies at this point, at least physically, and even though he gave me a scare with hitting everyone with daze, we were able to heal up before he could really capitalize on it, and we won without much issue. The next level cap at 42 gave us Summon Wind with Melia, which would be a nice agility buff for the party, and Headshot for Charlotte, which I didn't even bother with. We weren't hurting for damage and we were going to be fighting a lot of Mechon in the future, which meant physical attacks were out of the picture, since I still can't topple enemies. Now the fight with Metalface here was a bit worrying, since he actually did a good amount of damage to us. He also had some devastating AoE attacks that he comboed into me for my first try. The bleed from the first attack and the blowdown from the second completely wiped me. This time I went with Charlotte the lead so that I can keep Melia out of the way of big attacks. Spoiler! It didn't work because I was cooling down and Melia got killed. Thankfully I had enough HP for Charlotte to rush over there and heal her back up. I couldn't even try for a chain attack here, but that's fine since we survived long enough for the next big cutscene to happen. Which showed us our third free meal party member! Oh, come back! No, we need to trivialize the rest of the game! Oh. At this point, I make a detour to do a side quest chain to get Melia's 4th skill tree. The first time we can do this. A pretty decent one too, with my eyes especially on the reduction of ether attacks. These extra skill trees also grow quickly, so I just decided to put her on it to get some fast and easy skills. The newest level cap was huge for us though, because now Melia can finally use Starlight Kick. After so long, we can finally topple enemies. It was a dream come true. Then, on Valak Mountain, we had to take care of a unique monster for a plot important item. He was really annoying if you didn't take care of all the ads in the room. If one of them joined the party, it was game over. So after just clearing the room out, we attacked the guy head on and was pretty damn successful. Next up was the fight with Mumkar, which I was a little under leveled for. I went with Charlotte in front to have more control over healing, and decided to try out some daze and headshot shenanigans just for fun. Turned out to be a massive waste of time because Thunder Bullets still did more damage with 1/10 of the recharge time. It was still fun to try out. Either way, Mumkar wasn't a terrible fight until he decided to go after Melia. He shredded through her just like her father, but that's okay. I could just bring her back up. Oh, he did an AoE attack as soon as I did. Well, that's fine, I just need to get on topple to help her out and heal. That's an instant death attack for being toppled. Oh, I say that, but I don't think I've ever seen Mumkar be successful with that combo now that I think about it. After that miniature scare, I get Melia back up, heal us both, and at that point the fight was pretty much over. Now, I actually decided to fight quite a few enemies in Sword Valley, from slight worry that my level was a bit too low. And it was. These generic enemies were giving me a lot of crap. I had to pick my fights super carefully here. Now I had to fight Middleface one more time, and this fight kinda sucked. I knew that the fight would get so much easier as soon as I got rid of his ads at the beginning, but I found it pretty difficult to burst them down fast enough. I wanted to see if I could sequence break, but this game hates fun. So I just decided to level up to the level cap instead. No need to make things worse on me. This gave Charlotte Drive Boost, which is an amazing art that makes it easy for Charlotte to do everything, really. Do damage, heal, all that. Melia also got Summon Earth, which gives us some really nice defense buffs during battle, and her best single target damage in her kit. No, really, poison and other damage over time effects are so damn good in this game when you know what you're doing. Not that it's that handy bursting down these faced Mechon, but still, it wasn't so bad. I got my first chain attack in the run, and it was pretty ass, and because I was at a party gauge, I couldn't be revived after being down. Well, yeah, I don't know why I did this fight 2 to 4 levels lower than the cap, but I was able to get through the little guys during one of my attempts, and after that, it was just as easy as keeping myself alive. Bye bye, Mumkar. Now for Galahad Fortress. We have to go through this unique monster to get to the controls right in front of him. Other than him practically one-shotting Charla, it was pretty easy to keep him at bay while Poison and Blaze slowly whittled him down. Now for the big one. The last fight before we have a complete party. And yeah, it was piss easy. It was actually really easy to take these guys down without killing Fiora. They did some scary damage against us, but it wasn't anything Charla couldn't out-heal. Then we got a practical forced loss fight against Egil, and then we were done. Now after all that, we get Fiora once more. This time as a robot and... Why are you level 40? Yeah, this was a drawback from using expert mode, because now Fiora was significantly underleveled. We would have to do a lot of side quests and fight a lot of unique monsters to bring her up to speed, but that's only after we get everyone back together. As for the new Fiora here, she's pretty versatile with what you want her to be. I decided to make her a tank since I've never really done that before and it sounded fun. But before that, we had to do a forced fight with Charla only. I was pretty worried here after my first loss, thinking this would be another hard generic enemy fight, but then I figured out I can restart the fight and only gain aggro from one of the enemies. After taking him out, it was just a one-on-one with the other, which was easy peasy. At this point, now that everyone was together again, I started the grind to get Fiora to be usable, and it was doing these fights that I got to learn that making Fiora a tank was pretty damn fun, and that goes into her just being a fun character in general. In terms of personality, she's awful, but as our third and final party member, she was pretty great. It was even through this run that I actually used shield drones. Since I didn't have Shulk to use Monado Shield, this talent art actually had a purpose. And while it had its uses, it still felt kind of underwhelming. Oh, going back to sword drones. I even decided to go after some unique monsters that had yellow portraits, meaning I had a slight disadvantage. Didn't mean anything though, because surprise surprise, having 3 party members makes things so much easier. It was at this point where I hit a high that I had never felt before, but every time this happened, you know what happens afterwards. I completely forgot about the section where you lose Charla and Fiora temporarily, and for us that means we had to deal with only Melia. After all of this, was this the end of the run? There was no way that Melia could fight through this Mechon to get what she needed to progress. And so I didn't. No, really, I just put on some Earthcloak gems and that was enough to just pick up what I needed. Then I went right back to Lanada and got the party back together. Mini heart attack subverted. And at this point, since the main challenge is pretty much null and void with us having a full party, I guess it's time to blaze through the rest of the playthrough. For those who were only here for the challenging bits, thanks for watching. Well, time to go through the rest of the game. We did a few side quests to get Fiora's 4th skill tree, which is actually pretty damn great, so I have her on that to get some quick and great skills. Next up is Mechana's Field, where I get my ass handed to me by this pain-in-the-ass unique monster, so I just decided to continue the story. That leads us to our first fight with Jadeface, where we just walk up to him and feed on him for a few seconds. Then onto the Central Factory first visit, which we blaze through with how low leveled these enemies are compared to the previous and next level cap. There are quite a few forced fights, but these aren't very notable at all. Not even the final fight with these 2 M88 Rapids. Then onto Agniratha, where I do a lot of side quests before continuing on to our second Jadeface fight, which is actually pretty damn notable with how hard it usually is, at least for me. It tends to be the roughest fight in my experience on any normal playthrough, and here, well, about the same experience really. He hits really damn hard, but with my tanky Fiora build and Charla being an amazing healer with her massive boost at the beginning, he ain't that terrible. He almost wipes us all out with one of his AoE attacks near the end of the fight, but some pretty quick party gauge building and a revived Charla later, and we heal right back up. Now for the 2 fights with Egil here. You aren't supposed to fully win these fights, but I say nuts to that. We're bullying this tyrant. After dealing with his ads, we utilize Fiora's newest art to topple lock him. Yes, topple lock with Fiora, Melia, and Charla. Well, not quite. He still got back up to do some stuff, but it was really easy to just get my party gauge back up and rinse and repeat. Then we did the same for Yaldabaoth because it was funny. It was at this point I decided to get Charla's 5th skill tree. Oh right, I forgot I got her 4th skill tree at some point. Anyways, the thing I needed for that 5th skill tree was unobtainable for the moment, so I just decided against it and went straight back to Mechana's Core to finish Egil off. Of course not without fighting the worst unique monster in the game. Oh, and this apothecary thing or whatever. Then on to Egil, and yeah, he was cake. This party grew really damn strong throughout the course of Mechanis, and he was just way too simple to take down, even 4 levels below him. Then we had to fight some Telethia outside of Colony 6. Don't worry about it, I don't feel like explaining the story. This one was kind of annoying and it immediately used Soul Reed, but our party was pretty much unkillable at this point, so we just waited around until he was done. And the rest of the Telethia were easy as well. And then we fought Lorthia, the most overhyped boss in the game. If you have an Ether team to deal with her, which is 2/3 of my team here, the ads aren't too big of a deal. Just be smart with chain attacks to avoid occasional explosion and you'll be fine. Now onto the final area, Prison Island. Demon Pavlovsk was super easy, same with the Sanji Ball Behemoth. And it's only just now, while I'm going through this footage, that I noticed OBS picked up the video that I was listening to for background noise.
And she wants to do that, so she does it. And that's her story. This level introduces us to Sky Stretch, where you hold both Joy-Cons in the air and reach for the skies, and Night, where you hold the Joy-Cons like a sword. Already we're seeing a lot of variety with how these Joy-Cons work, because even though the Wii Remote was precise, this technology is so much more advanced that now we can lean and...
Shoutouts to Zenith for his great video on the WarioWare series. You should check it out. Anyways, back to Prison Island. We go through the rest of the place, fight this giant dragon, then begin the endgame. First up is Dixon, and he is always a little bit tricky. He does a good amount of damage and constantly had a paralyzed spike up, but ultimately he wasn't too bad outside of destroying Charlotte once. Next are the fights in space, and these are piss easy no matter what sort of run you're doing. So moving on to Zanza, the final boss. His first phase was pretty easy, but I actually had quite a hard time with the second phase. This is definitely a fight where having the Monado to deal with auras and buffs is pretty nice, and not having that is a little tricky. It also doesn't help that I'm pretty underleveled for this. I actually died quite a few times. But I eventually get a really good run in and go straight to his third and final phase. And it was just as easy as the first. We just piled up damage until the end when I wanted to be flashy with the chain attack. Though of course in classic Xenoblade 1 jank, I don't even get a single one more from a party of max affinity and max tension fellas. I still got sword drones at the end anyway, so whatever. It just would have been really cool. But yeah, that was Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition using only ladies. Would I recommend doing this challenge? Hell no! There's so many hellish fights to go through before you get Melia that it's just not worth doing at all, unless you put up a few lenient rules. Nevertheless, I had fun with this run. It showed me facets of this game that I didn't know about, and being able to try out some more niche tactics and strategies was a lot of fun too. Tanking with Fiora and damage over time Melia were definitely highlights to play around with. Now will I do this with Future Connected or the super bosses? Soft maybe. I do want to also do the other games at some point, which will most likely be challenges throughout the whole game rather than just the first 2/3. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video, and please stay tuned for other videos I make in the near future. Have a good one, y'all.